Okay, this is Kevin Miller again, Kevin's Politics blog, at kevinspoliticsblog.com. Wanted to update sort of after Jackson Hole, a number of things: Sweden and Finland's accession, formal accession in the NATO, a number of there was a Taiwan Strait crisis between China and the United States that was brewing the last time, immediately before the last time that I posted. Wanted to sort of wait until it had sort of passed over before I sort of commented on sort of anything that was sort of fact in that situation. You never know the information coming out while it's happening, what is and isn't real. Also wanted to talk about, like I said, Jackson Hole inflation. Wanted to sort of dispel some of the rumors surrounding Jackson Hole and the story surrounding inflation. I guess sort of first up though, talk about Joe Biden, his accomplishments. I see Marcus Miller joined. Hey Mark, how you doing? But yeah, wanted to sort of also, since you're watching, my sister, send my condolences to Jameer concerning her home. I know she had a fire, and so our sister wanted to sort of send my condolences. But I hear everything's all right, and so that's good. Yeah, but back to sort of the focus on the main subject at hand. Jackson Hole, there was the inflationary story. The Science Act was passed by Joe Biden, was just supposed to sort of propel the United States into the 21st century with chip manufacturing and the technology behind our computers, the things that make our day today lives function in this new technological era that we live in. And the Inflation Reduction Act, which sort of targeted specific industries, sort of providing relief for homeowners, relief for business owners, relief for students. There was a sort of a write down of the debt for students, totaling at least $300 billion, though the exact price tag is uncertain for student debt. If you have any student debt, that's going to be something to talk about. That'll be important with whoever sort of manages that debt for you, or if you manage it yourself, looking into Department of Education's website, trying to find out sort of how much of your debt can be written down, and so that's going to be important. But back to Jackson Hole and the inflation story surrounding Jackson Hole. The Fed Chairman Powell, head of the central bank here in the United States, the Federal Reserve, U.S. Federal Reserve, he commented on the sort of just very, very, very terse statement, totaling no more than 10 minutes. A very terse economic and monetary statement, basically sort of detailing that he is very he has specifically decided to pursue 2% inflation in the U.S. economy, which means that with inflation targeting set at 2%, that he's aggressively handling inflation through monetary means in order to stimulate the economy and increase savings by increasing interest rates, which has affected homeowners who have mortgages which may or may not be adjustable rate mortgages, or new mortgage owners, people who are just now getting mortgages, maybe some for the first time, who are seeing sort of higher mortgage rates than even last year or 2 years ago, where mortgage rates were. Credit card rates are affected by interest rates as well as a host of other things, including loans, personal loans. We were just talking about student loans; those are affected by interest rates. Fed funds rates, which are set by the U.S. Federal Reserve, and which help to set the rates between banks, as well as the U.S. Federal Reserve and private banks. And so, but this inflation story, I want to sort of zero in on it, because I've got some latest figures that I've been working on all day today, and what I've seen in the Fed funds rate, and these are classes that I've taken using the edX platform, as well as Coursera.org, edX.org, and Coursera.org, which are sort of massively open online courses, which you can take online anytime. They're free to take, free to join, and they have some of the most sort of I can't express enough what they've done for me in my understanding of even just monetary policy and finance, economics. I've taken courses in international relations. I've taken courses in philosophy, and so I just can't really express enough. Financial development and financial inclusion, I can't express enough. These were all courses from the IMF, less the philosophy and international relations courses. But nevertheless, the IMF is a partner with the International Monetary Fund, which is a fund first founded by John Maynard Keynes in the 1940s. The Bretton Woods conferences, which were held in Geneva, Switzerland, and which helped to found the International Monetary Fund, as well as the World Bank, which are international organizations, sister organizations to the United Nations. And so I can't express enough, though, what these practitioners at the IMF have taught me, and what I've learned on the edX and Coursera.org platforms. And so many exciting things coming out of there. There's just, you don't want to miss it. It's just so exciting, and I wouldn't give it up for the world. I really wouldn't. But back to the topic at hand. Using edX and IMF, the International Monetary Fund's course on macroeconomic diagnostics, I was able to discover within the U.S. economy's monetary conditions that they are actually historically, they are at a stable equilibrium. And so even though there's a disequilibrium in the amount of pricing as far as inflation in the economy, the actual story here is that there is an equilibrium between prices as well as wages. And so wage growth has increased in proportion to the amount of inflation which the economy has uptaked throughout this cycle. And again, economies, especially here in the United States, are cyclical or counter-cyclical, depending upon what monetary and fiscal conditions are prevailing at that time. And so what I've noticed is that the amount of inflation in the economy is actually at an equilibrium with the amount of wage growth which has occurred in the U.S. economy as well. And I think that's what's being missed here in this story, is that as we fight inflation, we're also with the output gap which exists, which is in fact I believe is at this current juncture is a negative output gap, and so we are not creating. There's more that we could be doing, but nevertheless, this is we have an extreme. What I'm getting at is that the output gap is indicative of an economy that has more growth in it than we should have more growth in our economy with the output gap. It is a positive output gap, but we have a negatively correlated, and so we need, in order to reach our potential, and wage growth is increasing in proportion with that output gap, which is helping to increase inflation because of demand side pressures, but also there's a supply side disequilibrium which has occurred due to China shutting down its economy. Again, the United States receiving most of its trade surplus or negative surplus from China, totaling at least $1 trillion of the trade deficit which we've accrued with China. Even though that number has gone down considerably over the last few years because of Boeing and the purchasing of aircraft, commercial aircraft from Boeing. This was during the Donald Trump administration, which that occurred. And so the trade deficit has decreased down to between 100 and 300 billion dollars, which is a 70 to 90% decline in the trade deficit, which historically over the last 20 years it has run practically at $1 trillion or more. And so particularly during the Bush and Obama years, Obama administration, the Bush administration, but touching upon the amount of inflation in our specific economy, the U.S. economy, we will see a number of different corollaries occur between, and these are all going to be sort of painful things for the economy. You've seen gasoline prices increase. We've already felt a lot of that pain. That pain will subside by the end of the year. By January 1st, I predict gas prices to be below $70 a barrel, which is sort of commensurate with where oil exporting countries' price equilibriums are, and so the amount of the price that a barrel of oil should cost in order for them to make a profit off the oil that they're selling is right around that 70 to 80 or $90 mark. 50 to 70, 50 to 80 is probably a bit more accurate, depending upon what countries we're talking about. There's a lot of smaller exporters of oil now that sort of oil exporting has gone sort of more global. It used to be only a handful of regions exported oil. Now there's numerous parts of the world that actually have oil and are able to find the resources to export it. You've seen Timor-Leste do that, which is a small country, Portuguese former colony in Southeast Asia and Oceania, on the same island as Papua New Guinea. You've seen other nations such as a nation like Belize, I believe, is exporting oil. Net exporter of oil. Costa Rica is a next exporter of oil, net exporter of oil. This ongoing while the Venezuelan crisis has sort of abated and the blockade or embargo on Venezuelan oil here in the United States has ended, and they've begun exporting oil not only to Europe, but also some reports have been coming out that Venezuelan oil has been making its way to the U.S. market and U.S. economy via Mexico, and so that's helped to ease. This is all very recent, as the price of oil skyrocketed over the summer, and we saw $6 and $7 per a gallon for gasoline here in the United States, premium gasoline here in the United States. That has only subsided though since those July 4th highs. The July 4th weekend was probably the absolute heights of that gas price sort of situation. Nevertheless, wage growth has been keeping track with almost at an exact equilibrium with the amount of gas pricing that has occurred, the price of a barrel of oil and other foods affecting other commodities. Of course, then you need gas in order to ship these things to the stores so that people can buy them, and that costs money, and that only adds to the inflationary pressures with all sorts of goods and services, including electronics, including bread and basic staples, clothing, you name it, you need gasoline in order to get it to you, and so inevitably. And so sort of wanted to touch on that story, that sort of, I know I might sound callous, I might sound sort of aloof, if you want to call it that, you can, but the fact remains that the amount of inflation in the economy has only has only there's an equilibrium between inflation and the amount of wage growth, almost an exact equilibrium that's occurring here in the U.S. economy. And I predict that with in terms of trade shocks, which are occurring from the Russian war in Ukraine, that Eastern, but particularly Western European, I think this is more of a Western European terms of trade positive shock that occurs in their economies, considering that 35% of their economy is based off banking and finance in Western Europe, and so and the European Union, and so with 35% of the economy based off banking, the terms of trade shock has only enhanced foreign held financial sector balance sheets, which will accrue positively on financial sector in the financial balance sheets of various companies, as well as European capitals, which will lead to a positive terms of trade shock, which is set to occur. And my prediction is that it will at first. Right now, we're going through it actually, where they perceive it as being a bad thing, but considering what the actual outcome, the finality of that outcome, if this is the November-December timeframe that I have, it will be positive by the end of the year, and will increase fourth quarter GDP for those nations, Western European primarily nations, as well as Eastern European. You could see some countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania see huge increases in their balance sheets. Norway, huge increase in Norway's balance sheet, huge increase in Sweden's balance sheet, and that's only going to increase the terms of trade between their countries and outside countries outside of Europe, and that's going to carry on over into the new year, 2023. And I just predict that it will not necessarily end until at least until oil picks back up, which I predict will pick back up. Even though I said that was the new normal, there is a sort of terms of trade carryover here into the U.S. economy, which has benefited oil and oil infrastructure, and demand has slowed, which has brought prices down. Meaning that perhaps it was a bit early to call it the new normal, but nevertheless, the terms of trade shock has carried over here into the U.S. economy, and will not abate at least until Memorial Day weekend, which is May, the end of May of next year, 2023. And so we're going to sort of touch down on sort of inflation, the inflation story that's going on, here in Jackson Hole, or over in Jackson Hole here in the United States, and sort of just wanted to sort of speak about sort of what the possibilities of that are, and just how big of the media, the role that the media is playing in the inflation story here in the United States, and how that's driving the narrative, which they talked about in Jackson Hole, and instead of the fundamentals, which is sort of what I want to explain to you. And I hope to do so further on my website. If you go to kevinspolitics.com, I'll post some information that you can perhaps take a look at, maybe some files, some Excel files that maybe you can see and sort of judge for yourself what you think is going on. And so thank you, and we'll talk hopefully sometime next month.